But, hey, sounds like I'm starting to just prattle on a bit here, because I think I've said great game like 5 or 6 times in a row now, so I'm gonna jump directly to what I don't like about the games in terms of, like, a broad sort of spoilers thing. So, I mean, if you don't want to hear the spoilers, turn off now, or just, you can wait a while, because, I mean, as I go along, the spoilers will get more intense as I go through this, but my top spoiler is, like, everybody goes to the comparison of or talks about Kratos as being like an archetypical Greek tragic hero. And I don't feel that kind of necessarily sits. I mean, yes, on one hand, the very traits that exemplified him and made him a powerful force or whatever among men, such as his pride, his bloodlust, his combat skills and stuff, were the very same things that eventually led to his downfall. I mean, unlike other tragic Greek heroes like Oedipus, where the hero recognizes the fault and he takes steps to atone for it, like in Oedipus's case, because he was a very proud man, kind of a little quick to the sword there, he ends up gouging out his eyes, renouncing his title as king, and deciding to walk the earth as a blind beggar, constantly relying on the kindness and friendship of strangers. But Kratos doesn't really change much. I mean, yes, he definitely feels bad about what he did or what he was tricked into doing. And the nightmares do plague him and stuff. But other than that, he's basically the same bloodthirsty son of a bitch from the first game. And then as he goes on, he just seems to get much and much worse, where you just casually kill people off because they're standing in your way or whatever. I mean, all the traits that led him to these things, he just keeps doing. I mean, he's not less bloodthirsty. In fact, he's a greater warrior, a greater fighter. He's more prone to kill people. And he doesn't really seem to undergo like any grand thing for atonement other than taking on some labors under the promise of the gods to help him get over the thing. I mean, his thing was he was like trying to like remove the memories and stuff. He thought the forgiveness of the gods would do that, but at the end of the first game, they just go, "Oh, you're forgiven. Your slate is clean with us, buddy." And of course, Kratos wasn't looking for that. He was looking for some way to make the nightmares go away. So, in that sense, I don't view Kratos as necessarily, a tragic Greek hero here, although he does fit the general mold. He's just a fucking egomaniac. I mean, the reason that he was doing this stuff just so he'd forget about what he'd done. I mean, it's all about Kratos. Kratos the great warrior. Kratos the great father. Kratos the great everything. I mean, my opinion might have changed if I had played the PSP game, because supposedly he reconnects with his daughter in that, and that might show a softer side of Kratos, but, I mean, honestly, the guy doesn't have much beyond his surface badassery, or at least that's how it looks to me. And before you go to argue that point, if you are going to argue that point, just take a second to consider, his general behavior throughout the games. For one thing, after everything goes on, he just decides he's going to end it. He's going to kill himself because he can't get rid of the guilt. He can't live with the guilt, which, is kind of a selfish thing, too, because he doesn't really think, oh, wow, if killing myself, am I going to impact anybody? But, I mean, suicide in itself, a lot of people do sort of view as being a selfish act, although, I mean, who's to say? I mean, you really can't judge on that shit, but jumping forward on that, he goes to try to kill himself, he ends up becoming the god of war. I mean, what happens after that? He just goes back to doing a lot of the same crap that he used to, where he has constant warfare, constant victory, like he's leading legions and legions of people who embody these same sort of values that he did in life, and in such a way that they could be compelled to make the exact same mistakes that he did. So, and beyond that, I mean, there's just so many traits of this character that don't really change in the games, despite continually, being shown to, like, be kind of foolhardy. For one thing, Kratos basically will accept power from anybody who's giving it, generally not really thinking about their ulterior motives, although occasionally question, oh, what's in this for you by giving me this? But, I mean, as long as he thinks he'll advance his goal, he'll accept help in the form of items or advice from anybody. Originally, he takes that help from Ares. Then, when he wants to work for the other gods, he takes that help from the gods. I mean, both of those things are pretty sensible because he is a Spartan, so Ares giving him power isn't too unreasonable, and the gods helping him out isn't that bad. But then as we go along, and you'll notice that there's a trait that anybody who offers to help him almost always ends up having their own ulterior motives and betraying him, but he just keeps going through it anyway. Then Gaia offers advice and help to take down the gods, and whoops, she doesn't really care about him either. In the third game, within the first 5 minutes, when it comes to, oh, I might lose my grip on this cliff, or oh, Kratos might fall, which one do you think she goes with? And then when our third character shows up, or third advice person shows up in the game, she just wants to get her stuff done. She does want Olympus being taken down as well, so she can reform the world, and she wants something in return, and that's the ability to help reshape the planet. And I mean, she doesn't seem terribly interested in Kratos either, and when Kratos refuses it, she leaves in a huff. Plus, the other big thing is, anybody who doesn't screw him over, he proceeds to screw over himself. So let's say he's offered a bow by somebody trapped in a cage. What's he going to do? Well, I mean, he could help the guy out to get the bow, or he could burn him alive. Which way do you think Kratos is going to go? And then frequently, when Kratos goes to, do anything, if anybody stands in his path, he will fucking kill them. I mean, it doesn't even matter, there's one scene where this guy's clinging to the wall and stuff, and if you wanted to, you could probably just jump down to the ledge below, or then just crawl across with your arms, or... Because, I mean, they do that, grappling thing just a short time after that, but instead Kratos drags him to his death, just so he can get a better foothold. And then, it seems sort of improbable that he does eventually develop a connection with Pandora in the third game, just because... I mean, this guy's had nothing but dysfunctional relationships over the course of the first 3 games, and within I think it's a span of 10 or 15 minutes, suddenly we're expected to believe that this guy has feelings for a person that he's just really met. I mean, especially not when 20 minutes before he used a innocent woman, who admittedly was kind of a jerk to him, to hold open a gate at the cost of her life. I mean, come on here. The other kind of big thing is, I don't quite understand the whole logic behind sending you to get certain things. In the first game, Pandora's box made perfect sense because Kratos, as far as we were aware, was just immortal and, just really lacked the power to go head-to-head with a god. Also, kind of another qualm, the fact that in the first game, when we fight against Ares goes massive, he's this super powerful god thing, and Kratos needs to go giant-sized to compete with him. After that, what happens? Kratos never bothers going giant again. I mean, sure, during the beginning of that one fight, Kratos shows up and gets some of his power siphoned off, and he loses his giant size, but he ends up taking down beating the giant-sized Zeus in God of War 2. Of course, Zeus escapes, and which brings me to my complaint about the third game, where we're expected to believe that he needs the box of Pandora again to somehow beat Zeus when he had Zeus on the ropes during the second game, and would have done away with him too if not for a intervention. I mean, technically speaking, I'm not even sure how much relevance the Blade of Olympus even had, but maybe it's just required to deal a death stroke against a god. I don't really know, because I notice he does seem to use that to finish them off half the time. And sort of gameplay-wise, I mean, some of the stuff really kind of drags on. In the first game, when you have all the Ares fights, which also doesn't really make sense, they set their cutscenes up before the save point or whatever, or cut points after the save, so if you're trying to get to it again and you lose the fight, you end up having to... Actually, I was freezing up during the cutscene instead. I had a version of the disc that was kind of messed up for the PS2, so I think that was it. And I mean, I really wish that they had done that, because... Was I doing that? I don't remember. But I mean, that Ares fight I didn't do on the first try. I think it was my second or third try. I'm terrible. But yeah, in the subsequent games, I mean, they don't handle the fights as well, or the final fight as well in like the second game, I felt. In the third game, they just really botched it. I mean, they completely missed the mark on the final fight against Zeus. I mean, sure, yes, it was massively epic when you're fighting Zeus and all of a sudden Gaia shows up. Well, I mean, plus the fact that you beat Zeus again, then Zeus, like, flies off, and you run after him, and then... Because, I mean, that's just so freaking annoying. Zeus just keeps seeming to get away from you, and then you have that whole thing where Gaia attacks. Instead of doing, like, a three-way fight between, or a fight between you and Gaia, or a fight between that and Zeus, you just jump in, two of you are fighting inside Gaia's body, and then after you beat Zeus yet again, I mean, what happens? You end up, like, fighting the evil spirit of Zeus who takes you into a dark wonderland, and then you have to sit through like 5 or 10 minutes worth of gameplay just to learn that the power that you needed to defeat Zeus was inside you all along. I mean, isn't that a heartwarming message? I mean, but it's at the same time, it's something we knew from like the first 5 minutes of the game, or actually the last 5 minutes of the previous game, because you almost did Zeus in. And yet they expect us to believe that he knew this other item, which at the same time means Pandora just, and spoilers here, throws her life away for nothing. There's nothing comes out of it. She opens up the box is empty because you took the power at the end of the first game, and maybe that's what was allowing you to defeat the other gods. Maybe the fact that you happen to be a demigod was allowing you to defeat the other gods, which was kind of a timely tell, which they sort of didn't really elaborate on towards the end of the game. It's like, Zeus was just scared that you would take him out like he did to his own father. And like calls him Zeus's son, and from that we're supposed to realize that he's a demigod. So like when I was playing through the third game, you know, Hera also mentions the fact that he's a mongrel offspring, and that's when I suddenly remembered, oh yeah, I mean, supposedly he might have been Zeus's son. I don't know if it's just me, but, you know, they could have handled that a little bit more clearly. I don't know. But, I mean, it was quite a while between playing the second God of War and the third, so, I mean, that little detail probably just slipped my mind. I mean, the really cool thing, though, is in the third God of War, you have all those exaggerated kill sequences where you do see the point of view from the victim half the time, and you're inputting the commands for it to be completely slaughtered, and I mean, it definitely is a cool thing for the Helios, you know. And then especially with the Zeus fight, where the last few seconds, you just like keep smashing him. As you smash him, just more and more blood splurts out. And I think you can probably do that forever, because I was like, kept hitting that button thinking that, okay, at the end of this, some sort of sequence will happen. But then after I stopped, you know, it jumped to the next sequence where he was actually like down and out. Was that the sequence that was right before that whole ghost sequence, or was that the sequence after? I can't remember, but I mean, that was just a completely epic way to end off, to send Zeus off to his grave. But I mean, the whole fact that you have to end up fighting Zeus and the whole logic, I mean, that ending didn't make a terrible amount of sense. I mean, for some reason, and obviously spoilers, Athena's been transported to some higher plane of being. Her purpose is ambiguous, but I guess she wants a world without gods that she can either rule or do something with, and then she'll dole out the amount of hope or whatever. And I don't know why she was pissed when she thought Kratos was releasing the hope to the world, but I'm sure there's some great logic or whatever. Also, in the original Pandora's Box story, the last thing in the box supposedly was like the worst thing of all, and I thought it was something that would remove all hope from people, but I mean, I guess in the kiddie retellings they did hope was in the box, and hope would help people get through all those tragedies, but I mean, you know, overlooking. This wasn't the first game, Kratos. No jumping.